Welcome to Capitol View on WSIU. I'm Jeff Williams, sitting in this week as we take a look at what's making news around the state in Illinois politics. The weather has caught up with me, so bear with me as I croak my way through the program today. To help guide our discussions this week are John Jackson, visiting professor from the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute, and Kent Redfield, professor emeritus of political science at the University of Illinois Springfield. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here.
Well, it has been another busy week as ICE enforcement efforts continue in Chicago. The federal government shutdown is moving into its third week. We'll take a closer look at those stories and probably more this week on Capitol View. Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, now, about a month and a half or so in. ICE enforcement efforts in Chicago seem to be becoming more aggressive. I think this week federal agents now reportedly targeting communities on the north side of Chicago in their enforcement efforts, communities of Rogers Park and Westridge and Edgewater. Meanwhile, protests and rallies continuing in and around the Broadview Detention Center. At the same time, we continue to see legal pushback both at the state and federal level from city officials and the governor and state officials. A lot to unpack here. Kent, what do you see as kind of at the forefront of this ongoing story this week?
Well, we have activity going on a number of fronts where some of it has to do with how the demonstrations are regulated or not regulated, crowd control, those kinds of issues. There are attempts by the city and the county to place some restrictions, particularly in terms of courtrooms where you're making arrests that are basically civil orders. You don't have any kind of judicial warrant that's involved, and this is a real bone of contention. And you've got those kinds of things taking place. So we are in the courts, we're doing things. The city is limited in terms of what it can do, where the federal government is asserting, this is executive power. It gets a little murkier when you get into situations like the ongoing battle as to whether or not we're going to have, the president's going to be able to nationalize the Illinois National Guard and use them in conjunction with, and again, it's not clear whether we're talking about fighting crime, which is pretty broad and might involve invoking the federal act on involving insurrection, and when you're talking about trying to protect the activities of immigration enforcement, which is a much more narrow executive order. So, quickly, what's going on is you've got some executive orders that are kind of the city and county together that want to, we have protest zones, how big it is, that's been a contention. We have the city and the county basically saying, by executive order, we're not going to allow ICE activities to take place in city property, buildings, parking lots, those kinds of things, support activities. And then there is an injunction that where an attempt to get a federal restraining order over the very aggressive enforcement where you're shooting pepper balls and those kinds of things and using tear gas. And right now, again, there's a court order restricting how ICE is able to respond to protests. That's in that could easily change in terms of the various appeals that are going on. And so you've got this tussle about where we can demonstrate or can't demonstrate, how aggressive the federal authorities can be in crowd control, and then you have questions about what kind of restrictions can the city place on essentially civil enforcement actions. And this mostly we're talking about arresting people that have come to federal court that are for some kind of immigration enforcement. Uh, then another front is involves the National Guard, and so you have two competing rulings at the moment. A federal appeals court in Portland has said that the federal government can nationalize the forces that are there and use them in what is often described as kind of riot control, insurrection kinds of those are the claims that are being made. You have exactly the opposite situation going on in the federal courts in Chicago, where there is a restraining order saying that from a circuit court judge saying that you can't nationalize the Illinois National Guard because the situation does not constitute an insurrection. If you're just using them for crime, then we're in an area where the posse comitatus law restricts, nationalized federal guard would be, federal military from enforcing the laws. There's a pretty stark difference between kind of, if you look at the three things that are going on in Washington, D.C., where the president has full authority to bring in National Guard. They've got about 3,000 sworn officers. There are about 3,200 National Guard from various states. That constitutes about you've got like a 70% increase of the people that are doing law enforcement kinds of activities. In Portland, if you get 350 National Guardsmen, that's going to be, in the neighborhood of 40%, 800 to 350. Chicago has 12,000 sworn police officers. 350 National Guard, which is a number that's being thrown around, constitutes about 3% increase. And so, what's being, Chicago looks much more symbolic. We're going to have a presence. Obviously in DC, this is a huge federal force that's involved with local law enforcement, and then an in between potentially kind of situation in Portland. So there's a lot going on here, and eventually the courts will sort it out as to where are the lines, what's permissible, what isn't permissible.
Yeah. Something that I wanted to touch on, we've talked a little bit about in some recent shows, and just kind of maybe to add some context and get either one of your thoughts on this, but how would you assess the level of intensity that is emerging from not only the government enforcement, but some of the civil unrest or demonstrations that are going on around this? As you look at modern history, I mean, are we going back to some of the protests and demonstrations that we saw in the 60s to see this kind of level of intensity, or is this something on a different level?
No, it's we had back in the 60s, and then some of us, most of us, all of us were there. You had serious confrontations between large crowds and against federal institutions, bombings. I mean, there really was civil unrest. And again, we should state, clearly there have been times when the federal government has activated the National Guard, and in terms of being able to have civil order and enforce civil law. And it's happened in terms of integration and trying to integrate schools and colleges. It's happened, in Los Angeles after the riots in Watt. We had, I have a vivid memory of, Time magazine with a picture of tanks going down this main street in Detroit. And so, we are nowhere at that kind of level. And I would say the activity, the demonstrations, Portland has a history of much stronger demonstrations and clashes with police than is certainly the case in Chicago. And so are you narrowly protecting, having the federal government the ability to enforce its laws? Are you really talking about a full-blown, nationalization of the local state guards in terms of confronting what historically we would recognize as insurrection, threat to civil order, and so this is this does not compare. But again, this is a judgment call, and so federal judges are you don't really even have a trial record at this point to get, we're appealing essentially restraining orders rather than a trial record. And so some of this, certainly falls within historical. A lot of it looks like we're doing basically, performance sorts of things to show a presence, to make a point, rather than responding to something that really threatens the ability of the federal government to conduct its activities.
Okay. I wanted that kind of transitions into the next topic I wanted to touch on, and we talk about demonstrations. The No Kings movement has gained some momentum over the past several weeks in opposition to ICE enforcement and some of the other President Trump's actions. This past weekend, there were coordinated demonstrations across the country, as well as here in Illinois, where tens of thousands of people turned out at rallies in Chicago and Champaign and Springfield, and here in Carbondale, where we had an estimated, I think, 2,000 people or so at Turley Park. John, what do you make of this No Kings movement and its intention or call to action?
Well, I think it's a massive example of grassroots democracy. The number of events alone is staggering. It started out, the reports early were 700 events. It ultimately went on to 2,100 estimated events, including a bunch of sites overseas. I had friends who went to the one in Carbondale, and the 2,000, according to them, is about right. From Chicago to Carbondale to Dublin and around Europe, there were all kinds of demonstrations. And I think it's worth noting that the media coverage said it was basically peaceable, that there were no big fights or anything like that. It was described as good vibes and a block party or going off to the morning farmers market kind of vibe. And I think on the other hand, the Republicans painted it much darker than that. They said this is the socialist, the communist, the Antifa, the Hamas supporters, and the extreme left of the Democratic Party. Both the speaker and the president said this is the Hate America crowd. The theme for the Trump administration was that particular negative spin. I think it's interesting, though, they've not been able to sell that very well. The early polls are showing that the approval rate for what happened is really remarkably high. And I think that goes to local news and local experience and friends and neighbors. You get it from a person across the street who went, you can't spend that. And local news did a great job of covering this. I think in summary, this shows the power of public opinion. There are not many guardrails left on the power of the president, but public opinion is one of them. And I think this is a case in point. Trump follows the polls, and the polls are not good for him on this particular one. So I'd say mission accomplished for that particular event.
Do you think this group, does it have do they know what the end outcome is that they're wanting? Do they kind of have a unified call to action, or is it kind of whatever the Trump administration topic of the day is with them? Because I know there's been some discussion at the national level about, yes, they're doing this, yes, it's been successful, but what is their end?
Well, I think it's resistance, and the resistance will only work if the political leadership class takes note, and most notably, does this get the attention of the Republicans in the Congress? Because that's the question ultimately. They can begin to clamp down. I don't think they're going to anytime soon, but that's the audience. They've got to get some support from the Republicans who think that Trump has gone too far.
Yeah. Wanted to shift gears a little bit here. One of the other issues that's making headlines is the federal government shutdown and the impasse, at least on Congress, in passing a continuing budget resolution, and as well as the implications thereof, primarily the health insurance tax credits that are subsidies that are set to expire, and that impact on the Affordable Care Act and the health care exchanges across the country and here in Illinois. I think if I've got the numbers correct, about 500,000 or so subscribers to the Health Place Marketplace in Illinois, and another 900,000 or so in the Medicaid expansion area of that. What are we looking at potentially if these expire and we're in the open enrollment period? It sounds like it's kind of a mess at the moment.
It is a mess. This is the continuing saga. This is day 22 and counting, with no end in sight. And right now, no discussions, and the House is not even in session. The record, by the way, for a government shutdown is just 35 days, and that happened in the first Trump administration. We're at 22 and counting, and they're not meeting. And the president had a pep rally yesterday on the back lawn of the White House, where all the Republicans went down. And the Republicans are saying this is just another continuing resolution, and in that they're right. This is for a fiscal year that started October the 1st, and there are a lot of questions left about that. As you indicated, we're still trying to put in place a permanent budget for FY26, which has already started. It's true that you've had lots of continuing resolutions. All last year, for example, they did that over and over again. And so the Republicans are saying, well, let's just do another. The Democrats say they want a deal now because it's the only time they've got any leverage. We've got to do something about health care. We've got to do something about food and nutrition. And those deadlines are looming. The matching money for the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, is coming due. The whole SNAP funding is going to run out on November the 1st. And the Democrats are saying we've got to do this now, and it's got to be a part of this discussion, because once we give this up, they've showed no sign that they're interested in negotiating with us, according to the Democratic position. The key here is Donald Trump, and he's showing no interest at all right now in getting this solved, and that's the way it was solved last time. He wanted to pay the federal employees, and especially the military, last time, but right now they've taken care of the military, so he sees no pressure. Indeed, Trump is using this as an excuse to start firing civil servants across the board in what he calls Democratic programs. And it's interesting the things they're calling Democratic programs that they are going through and firing people right and left. And so that, of course, increases the pressure. But the shutdown really seems to be here for a while. I will say there have been a lot of polls, and I think on balance, while both parties are being blamed, there is somewhat more blame being laid on the Trump administration because, after all, the Republicans do control a majority in the House and Senate and the presidency. So that seems to be the leaning, particularly the issue among independents.
Yeah. I think it was, I don't know, it was late last week or early this week. I think the governor's office and the insurance commissioner announced that the state kind of has a sort of a backup plan program that they're going to try to offer through the marketplace. Is this kind of a stopgap measure, or does it have any hope of trying to solve some of this issue for those purchasing from the marketplace in Illinois?
I think it's just a stopgap, but it does illustrate the point, and that is the point for Illinois and all the states is they want the states to take over more of the funding, particularly for food stamps, for example, and lots of things related to Medicaid and Medicare. And we've got real questions about reopening the Illinois budget to new decisions that will be painful decisions, and the General Assembly may have to deal with that on the upcoming veto session, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, John. Good transition. Speaking of veto session, Kent, we've got the second half of the veto session getting underway next week. Just from your observation, are you expecting any substantive action to be taken up next week?
There was an awful lot of things being talked about when we got into this, and I'm not sure that we're really going to have anything's going to happen. The pressure is off, fiscal pressure is off to do something on mass transit because, we've looked at the books again, apparently, and everybody is satisfied that they can kick the can down the road until we're talking about, the FY27 budget, both with the transit agencies up in northeastern Illinois and the state budget. And then, the laundry list was there. The only thing we know for sure is that there's a really strong majority within the Democratic caucus that maybe the Bears are going to move to Arlington, but we're not going to get any state money to help them move. And so, there's a definite no on that. Everything else, our energy reform was talked about, involving data centers and battery storage, insurance rate reform, more control over that with big increases in homeowners insurance. Hemp was out there in terms of how we regulate these products that you can buy in the gas station that are definitely not probably should be regulated. They're not. And the legislature would just as soon not make a decision if they don't have to, because you make a decision, you make some people happy, you make other people unhappy. I think I invoked this once before, but and this came from academia, where a dean once described, when asked to assess the situation in some kind of planning meeting, where we were at, and he said, well, I think we're poised on the brink of thinking about action, and I think that's that might be make a pretty good transfer to the way that the legislature often operates. So we could run 4 important bills when they come back to town, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen.
All right. Well, in the couple of minutes that we have left, gentlemen, is there anything in particular that you're going to be watching or keeping an eye on this week? John, I'll start with you.
Well, the races are really taking front stage in this part of the world. We get all kinds of TV from Kentucky, and we see Kentucky politics getting ready for their races to replace Mitch McConnell. I can report to you based on their ads that the ones running for Mitch's place all love Donald Trump. They've made that plain with their ads, but I think the interesting thing about television down here is the replacement for Dick Durbin. There are three very strong candidates, and of course, the lieutenant governor is very powerful by having J.B. Pritzker's endorsement. But the possibilities of the sort of upstart is our congressman and our congressman that has the 30-letter last name, and he's all over the news down here, and he makes it plain that he's got the most money. And Rajah makes fun of his own name, but he's got $21 million, and you can get a lot of name ID there. And I think in conclusion, the announcement by Darren Bailey that he's running puts a big name Republican into that race. And he has to start out with by far the best name ID. And so who the Republicans get there will probably come out to be Darren Bailey, but also we don't know on the Senate side.
Kent, anything on your radar?
No, if we're going to throw a lot of money around, it seems like more every election cycle, and so it's 10 million there, 10 million there, somewhere else. And as Ev Dirksen used to say, pretty soon you're going to talk about serious money. So.
All right. Well, Kent, we'll let you have the last word. Kent Redfield, John Jackson, thank you both for joining us. I'm Jeff Williams. Thank you at home for tuning in for Capitol View this week.